we're gonna have to read out older IMDb reviews of Dracula in the Provinces 1975. I don't know how to describe this film. I'm not sure if I even really want to. As you can see, the opportunities for screen caps were dubious at best. Well, help me out here, Cranston Man, 26th of April 2002. He claims it's a hidden gem from the great Fulci, hard to see, and oft disregarded film from horror master Lucio Fulci. This is a comedy vehicle for Italian funny man Lando Buzzanca, but of most interest for its offbeat humour and a nice and very substantial cameo from John Steiner as the gay Romanian vampire called Count Dragulescu. It is he who puts the bite on the hapless Buzzanca. Costina looks good, Brazi is wasted, but he was never really that good to begin with. For the real specialist, Cicio Ignacio is involved, and the old master Fulci keeps the whole thing going nicely. The print I saw came from Greece. It really is worth the time and trouble it takes to track down. Very Italian, very, very good. I'm not convinced still. Lazarillo, 4th of November 2007. Young Dracula, that's another title of this film. This may disappoint some people expecting from the English title some lost horror film from the late Italian horror meister Lucio Fulci. This is actually a sex comedy, a genre that Fulci was even more active in than horror earlier in his career. Ironically, Fulci and his fellow horror legend Mario Bava actually directed two of the best Italian sex comedies I've personally ever seen, and God knows I've seen far too many. Seeing more than four of those is probably too many. Bava's Four Times That Night, never seen it, and Fulci's The Eroticist. We made a decision here at AOD not to discuss The Eroticist. It's just, you know, life is finite. This movie reteams Fulci with comic actor Lado Buzzanca from The Eroticist. It is not as good as the latter film. Well, we finished Dracula in the Provinces, but it's definitely much more clever and sophisticated than your average Italian sex comedy. Not exactly a high compliment, I know. It's good that you know that. Buzzanca plays a successful but very superstitious and not particularly bright Italian industrialist who goes to Transylvania on business and has an encounter with Count Dracula. In a plot that is eerily similar to the later Hollywood film Kiss of the Vampire with Nicolas Cage, he comes to believe he is a vampire and starts very literally feeding on the blood of his workers. The Marxist satire will probably escape most Americans anyway. Marxist satire? What? But it's not nearly as well aimed as the political satire in The Eroticist. Don't do this to me. The industrialist suffers not only bloodlust, but gay panic after he drunkenly cavorts with Dracula's naked female minions, but finds himself in bed with his host for next morning. This leads him to stare uncomfortably at a men's basketball team he owns as they shower, and for some reason it causes him, in the most famous scene, to assault his acquisitive society wife, played by Silva Coscina, in the bath and bite her on the rump. What gay panic has to do with vampirism or the exploitation of the workers, I don't know. Nor do I know what is so gay about biting a gorgeous woman like Hoshina where the sun don't shine. That's the main problem with this movie. As a satirical comedy, it is kind of random and scattershot. Still, there is more intelligence and sophistication than is usual in these kind of films, and it has all the more usual assets of the genre, the nicest one belonging to Miss Hoshina, haha. I think anyone that knows enough about Fulci and Italian sex comedy genre to even be reading this will no doubt find it at least mildly entertaining. It's something of a curio, but it's... I don't think the screenplay was written as a Marxian inclined satire on Western industrial consumerism somehow. I don't think that comes through very well personally. Horror and sex comedy, one of Fulci's most bizarre films, says the_void. Oh, we've read out his or hers, I don't know, before here. 2nd of April 2008. 8 out of 10. Like most Italian directors active in the 70s, Lucio Fulci excuse me. Lucio Fulci tried his hand in most of the popular film genres at the time, and this film is one of his attempts at making a sex comedy. Not a horror film that most fans will be used to, and probably expect, considering the title. It's actually his second attempt after The Eroticist in 1972, which I am yet to see. Fulci is obviously best known as a horror director, and he's actually brought that into the sex comedy genre, as this film is sort of a horror sex comedy, though the focus is more on the sex and the comedy than the horror. I've seen a number of Fulci's non-horror films, and while some of them are decent, most remind me why the great director usually stuck to horror. But this film is actually quite good. The plot focuses on a man named Constantino Nicosia, the snobby owner of a toothpaste factory. He seems to enjoy treating his employees badly, and his wife doesn't get treated much better either. This changes when Constantino has a run-in with an elderly aunt who curses him. He then goes on a business trip to Romania and has an encounter with a vampire. I'm quite a big fan of this type of film. what are we talking about here? Unfortunately, we don't get treated to sex comedy favorite Edwige Fenech here, but even so, Dracula in the Provinces is a thoroughly enjoyable and actually quite imaginative sex comedy. In some ways, it's a shame that this film is a sex comedy rather than a serious horror film. Yeah, as Fulci's film does include a number of good ideas and twists on the classic vampire tale. The way that the central character is confused at first and initially thinks he might be gay is amusing and well played out. While the comedy is always rampant, his change into vampirism is well done. This type of film largely relies on set pieces, and this one features a number of those too. A scene towards the end with the dominatrix being one of the most memorable. The strangest twist in the film is the fact that there is a social commentary included too. Considering the type of film, it is naturally out of place, but it adds another element to an already bizarre cult film. I would not particularly recommend this to gorehounds that love Fulci for the likes of The Beyond and Zombie Flesh Eaters, but any fan of Italian movies or Fulci completers will no doubt find lots to like here. Very mild amount to like here, more. We're going to close it here. We've discussed this film for over 6 minutes, which is probably at least 4 minutes too many.